Hello, my name is Andrew Klinick. I'm a group program manager in the Windows division, specifically looking after the developer platform. I'm here today with my colleague Peter Tor to talk to you about Windows containers and how we believe that's the key to unlocking great application experiences, both on the Windows client, but also in the cloud.
Hi, I'm Peter Tor, a program manager on the app platform team, and I work with Andrew. And just as a teaser of where we're going to get to in this talk, I wanted to show you how quickly we can update an application from version 1 to version 2, regardless of the size or complexity of the application. What I have here is a virtual machine running virtual desktops inside a preview. I'm currently running version 1 of an application, and I'm going to run a PowerShell script here that's going to uninstall the app, switch to version 2, and run version 2. And you're going to see just how quickly that happens. Okay? 3, 2, 1, go. And now we're running version 2 of the application. Again, regardless of how complex it is. You'll see more about this later on.
Now, in brief agenda is really explaining why containers, why they're important to you, but then also helping you understand how to move your applications into a container and take advantage of that on the desktop, but also enable you to jump to the cloud. But of course, the number one question we get all the time is, why should I run my application in a container? I mean, it just works, so why should I change it? And surely, if I am going to change it, then my app's not going to work the way it did before, maybe even stop working. It's almost certainly going to be slower. And worst of all, it's going to be difficult to achieve. Well, our goal in this presentation is to really show you how easy it is for you to move to a container so you can get those benefits today. So step back and think about, why are we thinking about running applications in a container? It really comes down to the fact the apps and the operating system and the data that is shared between the operating system and those apps are really tightly woven together, so that it's very, very difficult to be able to decipher what's the application, what is the operating system. And that makes it difficult for us to update the application, but also difficult to update the operating system, because we have to go find all that app data, wherever it might be, and try and move it from OS update to OS update. And that's much of the time you see as actually doing that during the operating system update, is moving that data. There should be a better way to go do this. And then finally, what if I want to move my user data and I want to go to a different machine? How am I going to be able to do that if the user profile is really not being utilized? Now, of course, all applications should be using the user profile to store their data. But we know, in reality, that most applications just don't do that. So, and it's because applications are too tightly coupled to the OS. And we, frankly, have not given you a way to enable you to move your applications so that the data is stored in the user profile, so it can seamlessly move with the user. And, as a result of putting all that data into the operating system, we have this notion of PC rot. And, with all apologies to Garrett, is the tragedy of the uninstall. In reality, every application should be behaved properly, but we know it's not. Apps like to write to the file system in the registry. After all, that's what we told you to do for many years. But as a result, it's really become a problem, not because you're writing there necessarily, you're almost certainly doing the right thing, but writing an uninstall program to uninstall your application is super difficult to go do. And as a result, most uninstalls don't actually clean up after themselves. And as a result, your PC just gets slower over time. And perhaps more importantly, less reliable, as your application data is just accruing to that kind of debt on your machine. So let's take a look at an application that is seemingly well behaved and in fact not really doing anything wrong, and using mechanisms that we provide to you and the difficulties that can enforce. And I hand you over to Peter, who's going to show you that in a demo.
So here we have a simple WPF application. Let me go ahead and run it. And it doesn't really do much at all. It asks me, what's your favorite installation technology? It gives me a set of radio boxes to pick from, and asks me to explain my answer where I can type in some text. Now, of course, the purpose of this demo isn't to show you how amazing this application is, but to show you how the installation choices you use can affect the impact your application has on a user's machine, particularly after they uninstall it or in a WVD scenario when they move to other machines. So I have this application. If I want to share it with other people, one thing I can do is I can right-click on my project, say Publish, and I can go through the click once publishing steps. Now I've already done that, and I have that set up on a virtual machine over here. So I'm going to go ahead and double-click on that click once package that was created. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to install the application, and it's going to launch for me, and it's going to look just like you saw before, asking me for my favorite technology. Let's say click once, because I'm using click once, and asking me to explain my answer. And it's built into VS and Easy, so let's say that. Go ahead and save, and then I will just close the application. And then, of course, if I run it again, you'll see it's remembered that I checked click once, and it's remembered that I wrote built into VS and Easy. And that's because it's saving settings in the registry and the file system. Let's go take a look. If I look at the file of the registries first, we'll see that it's created a key HKCU software Fabricam WVD migration settings, and it has a favorite installed tech value with the value click once, matches the click once radio box. And if I look at this file here, which is in my app data roaming Fabricam folder, you'll see it's saved where I wrote built into VS and Easy. So it's saving its state in the user's profile, either the registry or the app data roaming. Now, what happens when I go and uninstall the application? Let's click in the Start menu, right-click on Fabricam, say Uninstall. Now, the first thing you notice is that it doesn't actually uninstall. It just takes me to this Uninstall or Change Program. So I just have to right-click again, uninstall, say OK. And now the application truly is gone. If I open the Start menu again and I go down to W, there's no more WVD. So the application's gone, but is it? Let's go ahead and look at that registry key again. It's still there. So uninstalling the application didn't automatically clean up its registry keys. What about that text file? That's there as well. So by having a click once application and have it write to the registry or to the user's profile and then uninstall the application doesn't necessarily mean those files and settings will disappear. This can cause a problem, of course, because it leaves data on the user's machine. It doesn't necessarily roam to other machines, etc. And we'll show you how to make that better in the future demos when we move to MSIX.
So as you saw in Peter's demo, you can write a perfectly good app. It doesn't really clean up after itself. Now in isolation, that's not really a problem. But as I mentioned beforehand, as more and more of these applications run, you get more and more updates, then that data starts accreting to the operating system, making things worse. So there must be a way that we can go solve. Now, in the past, there have been many attempts to solve this problem. And in reality, they've tried to do things like streaming an application. And in fact, some of my team's products actually go do that. And they try to layer the application so that you can really understand what was going on. But in reality, people just kept repackaging. They're repackaging those applications every single time. It's expensive. We can't afford the industry to do that. And, getting the right level of isolation was really difficult to go do too. It was either too isolated or the isolation was so broken that you didn't really get any of the advantages of it. And worst of all, you pretty much had to change your app to make it work that way. So what if we can allow applications to separate from the OS and also enable apps to really store their data in a user profile? And we believe that Windows containers are the answer to that. And the goals of Windows Container is to make your application better for you and for your users. We want it to be reliable. We want to ensure that the application is running all the time. And it's as good in 100 days as it was on the first day. And that is reliability. It's also responsiveness. We want to ensure there is no impediment to your application really taking advantage of all the power of your machine. And even more so important right now is its updatability. How do we keep those applications up to date so that your users, wherever they might be, are always running the latest version with all the security fixes, with all the right features? And because the reason why we want to do that, it's great for users. It also helps with your supportability. If something goes wrong with your application, what do? Well, in reality, what we find is that most people actually just tell people to uninstall their application and install it again. Uninstall is the turn it on and off switch for software. Now, this is a problem if your uninstall doesn't work. And if you only got half an hour to fix a problem, which is typically what we find, then it becomes super difficult for you to actually achieve getting your user back up and running. And as more and more of us are working remote, doing that without having to re-image your machine is so important. So Windows Container provides you with user profile support. So the application data is isolated without having to change your application. So when you write to the file system in the registry, then what we actually do is we actually take that data and put it in your user profile where it should have been all along. So if you're doing that now, then great, then no changes for you at all. And if you're not, then those calls to write into the operating system are going to work, but we're actually going to put that data with your application because we want to ensure that the application doesn't overwrite the OS and it doesn't interfere with other applications. But obviously, to do that, we want to ensure we can do it without you having to radically change your application. And then finally, we want to think about the application lifecycle management. And that, typically sounds kind of boring, application lifecycle management. What are you talking about? Well, in reality, the first install of your application is your first impression with the user. So the quicker you can get that install up and running, and the more efficient you can go do it, and you can guarantee success, is super important. And then once you've got the user there, being able to update them so that it seamlessly updates. Today, I'm sure you've all tried it. It's very difficult to get an application to seamlessly update. The application could still be running. In most cases, that's quite often true. And then you see, well, do you want to reboot to update this application? Well, I think 100% of users never wanted to reboot just because they wanted to update their application. Our goal with Windows containers and MSIX is to ensure that you can all get those benefits. So let's take a look at a very, very simplified view of how applications run on Windows today. So here I have a bunch of Win32 applications, and they can see the system registry and the file registry. They can also talk to each other. And of course, they can talk to the kernel and drivers and APIs within inside of Windows. When you start to move to a container with MSIX, we enable you to continue doing all those great things, but we also enable you to keep your application data local so that you're isolated from the operating system and you're isolated from other applications, but also to do so in a way that enables you to continue to talk to other applications. So IPC is still available. If you need to create another COM object, you can go do that. If you want to register your own COM object, you can go do that. So how do I get into a Windows container? Now, I've already mentioned MSIX is the key. I'm even wearing an MSIX t-shirt today. And the goal is that MSIX will allow you to get your application running inside of the container. What are the benefits of MSIX? Well, one of our promises is you should never regret installing an application. Now, you might actually regret the application, might not do what you want it to do. And, as good as our team is, we can't change that. But what we can change is if you don't like the application, you can uninstall it and it's going to leave your machine exactly the same state as it was before you installed the application. And we do this via a simpler packaging and deployment mechanism. And that's all around this declarative install. And declarative install allows us to understand simple things like what are the executables inside of your application? What things do you actually want to write out? In terms of you might want to do shell extensions. We support that. File types. But all of these things, which were available beforehand, required you to run code at setup. And this is the challenge that we have with today's setup. Is if you can run code at setup, then that could be arbitrary code and users are worried about what to go do. And mea culpa, that was my fault. I introduced that back, 20 years ago, and I'm kind of fixing the problems that my, 20-something-year-old self actually introduced. So we want to move away from here. It's a better thing to go do. And we want to ensure that we're really as efficient as possible as we can be on network bandwidth. This is even more important as more and more of us are working remotely, is I want to be able to update my applications, but I want to stay up to date, but I don't want to have to download the entire application when only a certain percentage of it changed. With MSIX, you don't have to do that work. We do it for you. You just put version 1.1 of your MSIX up on the website, and we do the comparison for you. You don't have to run any server code. It's all done automatically for you. We can provide you with tools that will show you the actual size differences for downloads between version to version. So that's enough talk from me. Peter's actually going to show you how to move your application to MSIX and show real code the benefits that you will see. Over to you, Peter.
So we looked at distributing this application as a click once package, and we saw some of the problems with uninstall. So now let's try moving to an MSIX application. Now, instead of right-clicking on my project and saying publish, which is what I did for a click once application, in this case, I actually went to my solution and I added a Windows packaging project, which I've called MSIX package. And inside this, I've added my WVD migration project as the application I want to package. Now, there are plenty of other resources you can go to if you want to learn about the Windows packaging project. But this is one way you can create MSIX packages from Visual Studio. So as before, I've already created a package and I have it installed on a different VM. So we know that it's a good clean VM with nothing on it. And in this case, this is actually a Windows Virtual Desktop Preview machine. So we'll start off by showing that there is no registry key for the application and there is no data file for the application. So this machine doesn't have any footprint on it. So here I have the WVD migration MSIX package, and if I double click on it, the experience is very similar to click once. I get a very simple install dialog, I click install, and very quickly the application is installed, and here it is just as you've seen it before. Now this time I'm going to pick MSIX as the application packaging technology that I like the most, and the answer here is, well, it's also built into VS, just like click once. It's easy, like click once, and it actually has a great uninstall experience that we'll see right now. So I'm just going to say built in VS, project, easy, clean uninstall. I'm going to hit save. We're going to close the application, open it again, just to make sure it's saved by settings. Right, it's saved MSIX, it's saved built-in project, easy, clean uninstall, etc. And if we go ahead and look at those places again, the registry key still doesn't exist, and the file still doesn't exist. And this is to do with the containerization that Andrew has talked about, in that the MSIX package, its registry settings that it saves and the files that it saved can be containerized, and that allows us to not only do a clean uninstall, which we'll see in a minute, but also allows this information to roam to different machines in a WVD scenario. So that today the user logs onto machine A, their data is there. Tomorrow they log on to machine B and their data is still there, even though it's a completely different virtual machine. And you might be wondering, well, if I uninstall the application and all my data is gone, what good is that if I actually needed to save that data? Well, if you actually have data that the user cares about, like documents and pictures and so on, you can actually go ahead and save it somewhere else. So by default, this was just saving it into the app data location that you saw before. If I save a copy, I get to pick where I want to put it. In this case, let's put it on the desktop, and I will hit save. And so now, if we type my desktop explain.txt, we'll see that it's there. So it saved it right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to uninstall the application. Uninstall. Notice, very simple. I didn't have to go to programs and settings, didn't have to find it again. I just click uninstall. And the application is gone that quickly. Let's go ahead and make sure that my file that I saved to the desktop is still there. Great, so my user files are still there. And of course, the application file and the application registry keys aren't there because they were never there. So we've actually got a really nice clean uninstall from MSIX with the ability to save user files if that's what you want.
Ensuring that we can enable your application to jump to the cloud is super important. To get to the cloud, we have introduced Windows Virtual Desktop, which allows you to run your applications, your existing Windows applications, in Azure. And we're seeing incredible growth for the use of WVD, Windows Virtual Desktop, over the last couple of months. Now, the key thing here is your application will, of course, will just run. And inside of Azure, so you're running a VM up in Azure, and that's giving you your complete Windows environment, and you can run the Windows desktop on different devices, or you can actually just show your application. Now, of course, we're supporting a whole slew of devices. Number one, of course, is Windows. And the great thing about Windows is you really have the ability to run the application as if it was running locally. So you get to just see the window for the application. It shows up in the start menu. It shows up in the taskbar, just as a normal Windows application would. But of course, we also want to ensure that all of your users can access your great Windows application, no matter where they're at. So we run on Apple products, we run on Android, and of course, any web browser can take advantage of this. So when your application is running in WVD, it's now going to be running across a number of VMs in a host pool. Now, the host pool allows the system administrators to really load balance where the users and where the applications are. So, which is great, but it presents some challenges for you as a developer, because your user might move from one VM on one in part of the host pool to another throughout the day. Well, if your data is not being separated into that user profile properly, then that becomes very, very difficult and very jarring for the user, because they would realize they'd have to log on again and remember where they were. We want to ensure this is a seamless mechanism. So whilst your application will work, it does present some challenges. And the number one challenge is enabling you to get user profiles. So WVD has the ability to separate the user profile layer away from the virtual machine onto a separate server dedicated for that user profile. This is great, so that when the user moves from load balance between VMs, they don't see any difference. All the data within the user profile is just there automatically for them. So the user just looks like they're saving and accessing files to the disk. The documents go there. Of course, they could also go to OneDrive as well. It enables them to really ensure this seamless mechanism. But what about the applications they're using? We want to make sure those are seamless for the user as well, so that no matter, even if those applications haven't separated their data into the user profile, they can take advantage of this. So we've introduced MSIX App Attach. MSIX App Attach allows your application to be deployed to any server, to any one of those VMs in the endpoint. And we want to do it with a minimal performance impact, so that even though your application is seamlessly moving across machines and across VMs, that the user won't see any of that. And the great thing we enable you to do here is you take your existing MSIX, which works great on your desktop machine, and then you can just move it to MSIX App Attach. And it essentially creates you a volume which you can then just attach to a user's profile as they need it. So your application, or whilst it's not installed locally, we just mount your application and it shows up within seconds. And this makes it so much easier. So for example, if I look at here, I have a marketing, finance, and engineering. And, for engineering, then, they have a certain set of applications that you need that probably the marketing people don't need, and vice versa. So now I can just build one standard image of Windows and just attach the applications I want, rather than having to go build an image for Windows for marketing, for finance, and engineering, and update those images every time applications changes. So this way you get dynamically assigned applications instantly and based off of all the great things you do with MSIX on the desktop. So when I log on, then I'm sent to a host pool and I log into Windows, and then my user profile is automatically attached to me from a file share in the same, up in Azure in the cloud, but also my applications are just mounted from that same file share and they're instantly available to me, which really enables logon time to be dramatically reduced. So MSIX App Attach provides me with that mechanism to move to WVD. But let's take a look at a demo of that Peter's going to show us of taking the existing MSIX application and moving it into WVD using MSIX App Attach.
So far, we've manually created a package with Click Once and a package with MSIX and deployed that to 2 different virtual machines. Clearly, this doesn't scale to a large Windows Virtual Desktop deployment with hundreds or thousands of users, and this is where MSIX App Attach comes in. It's a way to incredibly easily and quickly give access to applications to all your users without worrying about having to manually install the applications every time the user connects to a machine, or having specially configured machines specific for each user and the applications they need. You can have a generic baseline VM and then almost instantaneously attach as many MSIX apps as you want right when they log on. So let's kind of see how that works. Obviously, normally your IT administrator would do all this work through the Azure portal, setting up your Windows Virtual Desktop environment. We're just going to show you kind of behind the scenes how it works with some manual commands. So I'm back here at my Windows Virtual Desktop and I'm in PowerShell. And what I'm going to do is, if you see here, I have a virtual hard drive, a VHD disk image, and that's got my MSIX package that we just installed, but actually pre-installed into a virtual hard drive. So all the files are already laid out, everything's laid out exactly as you would expect. And this is where MSIX App Attach gets its speed from. It doesn't actually have to lay down any files. The files are already laid down inside a VHD. So in order to get this to work, there's a few things that we do. Again, this would normally be automated by your IT people in the back end, but we're just going to show you how it works behind the scenes. So the first thing we do is we need to mount the VHD. And because we're using MSIX packages that, again, because of that containerization, are read-only, we can attach this VHD in a read-only mode, meaning that you could have many users all attached to the same VHD, and so everybody can share the same VHD. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to stage our package from that attached VHD. And you see that was very quick. It succeeded almost instantaneously. And then we're going to use add apex package to register the package that was found in that VHD. So that's also very quick. The application is now registered, and we can see it's now in the start menu. So I can run the application and so on and so forth. Hello, save. And the application is here, and of course I can uninstall it through here, or I can uninstall it through PowerShell as well. So let's go ahead and uninstall that. And now the application is gone, and again there's no registry keys, there are no files left around, etc. So that's how MSIX app attach works. Again, all this would all be automated. The users would never see it, but because the applications are pre-laid out in these virtual hard drives, and all that Windows has to do is attach the VHD, which is very quick, stage the package, and then register it in place. No matter the size of the application, it's very, very fast. Obviously, my application is quite small, and even in double-clicking on the installer, didn't take very long. But if you had a very large package with hundreds of megabytes of files, it would still attach and register and run just as quickly. Now, also what we've been doing so far is I've been building these things manually in Visual Studio and copying the files around, etc. And that doesn't really scale well to a proper CI/CD environment. So we've actually got a lot of this automated in Visual Studio, Azure DevOps, and with GitHub. So I've made some changes to the application, and now I want to push out a new version of the application. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize my desktop, and I'm going to change my branch here from master to demo update. I'm going to check that out. And you can see I've made a couple of changes. First, I changed the text to what's the best technology for DoDV. I've pre-checked MSIX. I've actually disabled these other buttons, and I've pre-written some text here that you can use for explaining your answer. So let's go ahead and go to my GitHub account here, and I'm going to go ahead and create a pull request for this branch. So demo update, this is a new improved version, and let's go ahead and create my pull request. And this is where the Azure DevOps pipelines come in. So there will be a automatic check. There's an automatic check for building this particular project in Azure Pipeline. So I can go ahead and click details here. More details in Azure Pipelines. And it's kicked off this automatic process that's going to compile my project, package it up into MSIX, and then even build that VHD for me. Now, it's going to take a few minutes, so we'll come back when it's done. Okay, so our pipeline finished, and you can see here that it produced version 3 of our MSIX and version 3 of our VHD. Now, again, in a normal operation, this would be created inside a network share inside your WVD environment, so it was easily attached to all your WVD machines. But again, we're going to show you how this works manually, just so you see what's going on behind the covers. So I'll switch back to my virtual machine, and you can see here that I've already downloaded the package 3 and the VHD version 3, and I still have version 2 here. And to show you what the upgrade looks like, if you remember, I removed the package before. Let's go ahead and re-add that, just so we have that version running. So we'll stage it again very quickly. We will add the package again very quickly, and we will see that here is my old version still running. I can do what I want with it and go ahead and close it. Now, in an update situation, what I really need to do is I need to unregister the package again, dismount the VHD, remount the new VHD, and then reattach the new version 3 package. And again, this would normally be all automated in the back end. Typically, it would happen when the user logs off and logs on again. We would switch the VHD they were using. Again, the VHD would be on a network share. And I'm going to show you this automated by just running a simple script. So if I clear this for now, and I show you my update script, it's going to go ahead and remove version 2 and then dismount the version 2 VHD. Then it's going to mount the version 3 VHD, again read-only. It's going to stage the V3 version of the package. It's going to register the V3 of the package, and then it's just going to run the app straight away, just so we can see how quickly this kind of works. So again, we have version 2 of the app running. You'll see I can click all of these buttons here and close that, and now we're going to upgrade to version 3 by just running this update script. So ready, go. And now you see I have version 3 running, and where I can't click these buttons because I have disabled them. And I can't change the text because I've disabled that too, because really this is the only thing you need is MSIX. So you can see I went from version 2 of an app to version 3 of an app in probably less than a second or so. And again, regardless of the size of the application, this is how quickly you can update applications. So yes, this was a small app. It only took a few seconds to install anyway, but because the app is pre-installed in that VHD and all we're doing is mounting, unmounting a VHD and registering some files in place, it's incredibly quick no matter how complicated your application is.
So Peter's demo really showed you how easy it is to really take advantage of all the cool things that you've done with MSIX and move it quickly to the cloud. We want to make your applications better. It's really about the user. And we want them to love your application. We also want them to love the OS as well, so they can stay up to date with both your app and the OS. And you can take advantage of that by using MSIX today on Windows 10. We support MSIX from version 1709 and onwards. So everywhere you're running Windows 10, you can take advantage of MSIX. Reliability, super key. We have 99.97% reliability for install and uninstall. That is so difficult to beat. It's responsive, both in terms of install time, but also your application runs as fast as it does today as without MSIX as it will do with MSIX. And updatability is going to make it so much simpler and automated to keep your applications up to date without interrupting your user's workflow. And then finally, being able to support that and really being able to reset and repair applications is going to be key. And then finally, if that doesn't work, you can use uninstall. And above all, we wanted to ensure that MSIX was not just about the client. It was helping you get onto the strategic direction from Microsoft, which is supporting both the client and the cloud to run your Windows applications. And the MSIX app attach allows you to really benefit from the work you put into MSIX today on the desktop and easily move your application to the cloud, and containers ensure that continues to work. So what is the call to action? First one is move your existing application to MSIX so you can get the benefits today on Windows Desktop. If you go to aka.ms/MSIX, then you'll find our site, which has all the documentations and samples, but also links to some great tools from our ISV partners who really make it super simple for you to move your existing applications to MSIX. And in fact, you might be using them to create your setups already. And then once you have MSIX, take a look at WVD and MSIX app attach. You can go to aka.ms/WVD, and it will provide you all the information required to actually set up a WVD environment and start taking advantage of MSIX. And of course, we welcome your feedback always. And there's entries in both of these websites where you can get involved with our tech community. My Twitter handle is at Andrew Clinic. I'm always happy to talk there as well. And we have an ongoing community to really help you with moving to MSIX.